are we delivering our strategy? And we're going to be doing some really cool demos along the way so that you can see answers to this question, and hopefully get to know a little bit more about Azure DevOps and Nooga and how you can actually see a breadth of things. So today we've got three amazing folks. Well, two and a half. I'll give myself a half amazing. We've got John Kosco. Say hi, John.
Sure. Everyone, good morning. Good day. My name is John Kosco, and I've got over 30 years experience in information technology and business operations, working with companies for agile transformation, getting their products in line and services delivery. And I've worked in aerospace, financial, healthcare, nuclear, and energy industries. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Michael Ginart.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Michael. I'm the product lead from Nooga. I'm the one shaping our roadmap when it comes to portfolio and scale. I'm a techie. I've been a lean agile consultant for years, and now I'm taking that experience into building products. So hi, and this is
Sweet.
good evening from Sweden.
Yeah, I actually saw a few Swedens up in there. That's awesome. And I'm Rebecca Davis. I work at Scaled Agile. I'm on the framework team. I'm a SAFe fellow. I do a lot of the writing about LPM and the creation of new LPM competencies. So I was extra excited to get invited to talk with these guys about the big question that I think I try to answer in my guidance, and a lot of us are trying to solve for, is if if we actually have a great strategy, how do we actually see that it's getting executed and there's not stuff coming in from the side? One thing about this particular session that we're about to run is we are not going to be talking at you from a theoretical perspective about from like our usual job roles. So we are going to explore challenges and solutions for how we align strategy to execution, how you see that as a leader. But we're not just going to be like showing you slides and saying like theoretically it could be what worked. Instead, we are going to be play acting a little bit. And so I'm going to be acting as a client executive, put on my executive presence. And I'm from whatever big fictional org you want to believe I'm from. John is going to be acting as a kind of like what he is already, but he's going to be acting as a consultant who's trying to help me out with a lot of questions I have that have been keeping me up at night. And then Michael is going to be also similar to what he is, but he's going to be showing Nooga and really answering from the things keeping me up at night and John's guidance about like how can things connect. Michael's going to be showing, and this is how you can actually see it so that you can run sessions. So it should be pretty fun. If you're used to seeing any of us in our usual role of sharing guidance or sharing slides, that's not us today. So we're going to get started with who we are from this point on. Are you ready? Yes.
Yes.
All set. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you, Rebecca? How are you, Michael? Glad you guys joined the call today.
I'm really
awesome,
hoping you can help me.
Yes. What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I am Rebecca. I run a somewhat large organization, and what I'm excited to talk to you about today is really, can you help me with some issues I've been having? So, I do run some pretty serious sessions with my other senior leaders, with my other VPs, and I am just really concerned right now that I don't actually have visibility to, are we doing the right things? I really want to be able to ensure that the data I'm getting is not like somebody thinks that it is happening, but I want to know it is happening. So how can I ensure that the goals that we come up when we meet together are actually being executed?
Yeah, I mean that really is a critical question, and from our experience, across various industries, that alignment really starts, as you mentioned, kind of with clear communications around, first off, what are those strategic objectives for your company, right? And so, for example, in the healthcare industry, I consulted with them, and what we put in place at Cprime is we worked them to put a regular strategy alignment workshops. We would either be focusing on strategy or we would be working on how is that strategy being executed and have those discussions. But what's key about these workshops is that we wanted to understand how the work that people were working on actually contributed to our goals, our company goals. Sometimes you might find out that the work they're working on isn't aligning to our goals, and we don't have that alignment that we look for. And the key thing about learning, once you know what your strategy is and then how your work is aligning to it, you can really start to get behind the why are we doing what we're doing. So once again, I think you have a very great question, and I think we can help you with how to bring that strategy and that work into view, so you can see how are you working, and as your question was, are you working on the right things?
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. I got to be honest, I think I'm pretty good as a leader of getting my directs into a room and aligning on strategy, but I don't feel like that's necessarily ending up with everybody else understanding it once we walk out the door. I feel like when we are together, and I'm very interested in your workshop idea of who's actually involved, but I feel like when we are together, we walk out with some really clear OKRs. And then a lot of my reports and myself are just having a really hard time knowing if the teams actually end up working on them or if we're just talking about them and then nothing's happening. Things are moving forward, but I just don't feel like they are moving forward in the way that I'm really hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, you make an excellent point, having those conversations, bringing people together. One of the things that we have seen is that we want to try to shift focus from maybe outputs of what people are producing to actual business outcomes or strategic outcomes. And to do that requires like a mindset change, right? Where is our focus, and how are we aligned to the outcomes actually being produced? Now, you may have some successful metrics, but those are important to have if you don't, really to focus on, and to focus on the value being delivered versus just task completion. We've seen it again and again and again. Everyone's status meetings. Did the work get done? Did the work get done? Where are we with the work? Red, yellow, green. But ultimately, what we want to look at is what is the work being done, but how does it align to outcomes? So let me turn it over to Michael. And Michael, maybe you can demonstrate how Rebecca might be able to see, are they working on the right things?
Yeah,
Yeah, that
absolutely.
also sounds really nice, but I want to see it.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Let me demonstrate you what we built at Nooga. We started with interviewing a lot of customers, and they said pretty much the same things that you're discussing now. So like, how can we see the whole picture? How can we know what's going on? Are we connecting our strategy to our execution? And this is what we built in Azure DevOps. So what I'm showing you now is actually Azure DevOps. This is a live demo. We entered a portfolio, which is called Core Trail Experience. So the first thing we had to do when we built our product was to enable the connection between strategy and execution. And we did that by implementing OKRs as work items. So it's a new work item type in Azure DevOps, and we use OKRs as strategic objectives and portfolio OKRs as measurable outcomes, right? So the first thing you see here in your left pane is something we call enterprise OKRs, and that is strategic objectives that spans across several portfolios. So by having that here in Azure DevOps, they exist and are visible to the people that work in Azure DevOps, which is pretty much the entire software department, so to say, and your teams, your engineers, and it's easy accessible for them to see that. So let's just read out one of these or select one of these. And before I do that, I would like to say that we're looking at a company called Happy Trails. They are developing software for outdoor adventures, pretty much like Strava, if you're familiar with that app. So here they have a strategic objective that says, propel Happy Trails to become the undisputed go-to app for outdoor adventurers. So let's expand on that OKR and look at their key results. So here we see a key result that's specific. Increase average App Store rating from 4.2 to 4.7 across all platforms. So that is something, John, that I would call a success metric. Like we can track that, we can follow that, we can see the progress. So the next level here would be to look at a portfolio, a specific portfolio in this case called Core Trail Experience, and what they do in order to drive this enterprise OKR, the strategic objective. Here there is an objective called Inspire Hikers to Share Their Love for Happy Trails with the World. And in here, you can see several key results. One of them says, we need to reduce the time from satisfaction event to rating from 1 week to 48 hours. So they want their users to rate their product and do that quite quick if they gonna reach the 4.7 ambitions here.
So
yeah.
I actually didn't realize that this tool could see strategy. Is right now we're really putting our OKRs in a bunch of spreadsheets. So it's kind of nice to be able to see this connection. Yeah, this could be something. Keep going.
That's great. Cool. So the next question is then what you said. When you walk out the door, you have some clear OKRs. They are visible here, but how do you know that the teams are actually working on them? That's where we pull in the work. So here you can see all the epics that this portfolio is working with. And what we've done is that we highlight the connections. We call these the golden thread. That's actually connecting strategy to execution. So you can follow the trail. We could go from top to bottom here. We can see how everything is connected. I mentioned this key result that says reduce time from satisfaction event to rating from 1 week to 48 hours. And we follow that trail, we can see that that leads us to an epic. And if I haven't said so before, these are all work items within Azure DevOps. If I click on this key result, you get the work item. So this gives you an overview of how things are connected. And to the right where you see the work, you have the timeline, the years, the quarters. If you are working with a SAFe framework, you have your planning intervals, which are the colorized columns here, and you have your day markers and so on and so forth.
So this is really interesting. I do have a question because we do already have Azure DevOps, and apparently some of the people in the background listening to our conversation do right now too. And they're curious, and so am I. Is this OKR overview? Is it out of the box? I've just never seen this before. So does it come with Azure DevOps?
Yeah, so I'm plugging a product here. Yeah, no, it's not out of the box. It's a product that we at Nooga develop. So you would find this product in the left menu here where we have our little icon. And what we're showing right now is the portfolio extension in Azure DevOps. And we wanted to make it easy for everybody to get to make it possible for them to pull up this view and look at how everything connects. Because it's also important for the teams to feel that they contribute. So if they are working with something, they can see how if they're actually doing any difference. So yeah.
So what do you think, Rebecca? Did that show you a little bit about seeing how work is aligning to your strategic goals as a company?
Well, what I do think is impressive about it is I and my directs have really had a hard time finding a tool where we can have a source of truth. And this so far is starting to look like it might be able to help with that so that we don't just have words on walls running around without them actually being connected to what's actually happening. So on a pretty good track so far, but I still have more questions.
Yes. Well, let's go to more questions. What else keeps you up at night? Share with us.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, the concept of the whole picture. I have a pretty large organization. I have a lot of senior leaders coming and telling me like their piece, but I'm trying to move my company forward together. So how do I see the whole picture? How can I ensure that the things that are happening are actually connected? I see a little bit of the trace lines that you just showed me, but how do I get complete visibility about what's really going on.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. We've worked with many clients about visibility. One client mentioned they feel like they're in a submarine and all they can look through is one of the portals and they really don't see the whole end to end or the whole view. So visibility is indeed critical, right? We worked with a tech company recently and we talked to them about putting together, cross-functional review process to look at that end-to-end view and allow different teams across the organization to be able to look quickly at what progress is being made, what challenges are occurring, and what this did once we implemented that, then everyone started to become on the same page. They really started to see what the silos were dealing with and being able to break those down, but really starting to create that transparency.
Mm. But I mean, I think that's nice, like the idea of this like group review with my leadership team. We do that right now, but it just doesn't feel like I'm like they come with a deck and they show me according to this PowerPoint, this is what's going on. So what I really want to see is like, okay, that's a fantastic PowerPoint. Is it happening? I need to be able to see that.
Yeah, and I think that's, visualizing how your portfolios are actually moving forward into outcomes is something that, the moment someone cuts you a PDF or a presentation, it's already data. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't you prefer something that you're looking at in a real-time basis? Basically saying across my organization, here are my strategies, across my portfolios, here are the epics, my features, my stories, the work that's being worked on. And how can I see that almost in real time, like as things are happening, as work being done? And the other thing about having a true view of reality of what's happening today at this moment, you also have the ability to start identifying what we call shadow work that's typically being worked on by the teams, but not necessarily aligned to your portfolio's vision and the goals of your portfolio or the goals of your enterprise organization. So this is where we recommend at Cprime have regular reviews, have regular audits to be able to look at not only how your work is aligning to the portfolio and the strategic goals, but truly get an understanding of what is work being done not aligned to that work. And what I'll share with you is a lot of organizations that we work with, they usually try to do this manually and it requires a lot of time. This tool has the ability to do that for you very quickly and have it be an automated solution. So I'll turn it over to Michael. Michael, maybe you could share with her some ways the tool could help her with these questions.
Absolutely. So again, it's pretty much the same view we see here, but this time we see all the portfolios, everything that's currently going on. And it's not just what's going on right now, it's completed work, it's ongoing work and planned work. So this, as you mentioned, John, is live data. It's nothing that has been extracted, presented in a PowerPoint that gets stale after a few days or so. So this is how the reality looks. And then we understand the challenge here when we are looking at so much data. So what we heard and what we work with here is that we can see everything being worked on, but it would also be nice to track work that has high value, high valuable outcomes, so to say, and where we not might be executing as planned or where there are risks connected, conversation starters, that is. So in this case, you might see these epics. If I zoom in on them, you might see that they are red. So this might be something that we would need to discuss. In this case, we passed the target date and it's active and ongoing and it's glowing in red. So why is that? If we click on that epic, we can see that it connects to this OKR in the portfolio core trail experience, and furthermore up to the reach every adventure in the world OKR, enterprise OKR. So what we're trying to do is to pull out data that we need to discuss, because the challenge here, it's so much. You get the view, but then what? How do you work with this data?
And Michael, one thing I'll
Hmm.
just call out on this
Yeah,
view, you have that blue line, that
yeah,
little diamond blue line around quarter 2. That indicates where we are today. So you're actually being able to give real-time data as it looks today, looking backwards to previous quarters, but also looking forwards towards your roadmaps. And I think that's an impressive point. How about showing them a little bit of the shadow work? How do we
yeah,
see
for
what work
sure.
isn't aligning to
Absolutely.
our goals?
So visualizing shadow work here would be to visualize all the work that's not connected to any strategic objectives or OKRs. We can do that by clicking on this icon, and then we'll see all the epics that's not connected, so to say. And here we can see that we have several epics that are closed or active that's not connected to your strategy. And this might not be wrong. It might be valid. Some reports are saying that like 30% of the actual work is not connected to the strategy, but this is a basis for discussion. So you want to identify, you want to see that early so you can have the right discussions.
Hmm.
So Rebecca, looking at kind of like your past, what work maybe were shadow work that was already completed, work already in flight, or even work being planned for future quarters. Would this help you out with talking to your leadership team and your management team?
Well, what I think is really helpful here is, all of our organization is also using arts like you're showing on here, but you have a couple of views where
I'm sorry,
I could
Rebecca,
actually
breaking up a
look
little
on
bit.
something, getting a view for. Oh, John, could you hear any of what I said?
I heard that you can
Can you
see
guys hear
art,
me?
but are you looking at a team level? You want to look
Oh
at, because
no.
we'll be showing that in the next section. We'll talk to you about how do we drop down, potentially from the program level, because we've been at the enterprise and the portfolio level. And now in the next section, we'll talk to you a little about what you can see down at the team level. So you're about to see that. If you just give us a few more minutes, and then we'll show you what the team view will look like.
So a little peek
Okay,
preview
if you
then.
can hear me again,
Uh,
because sorry
yeah,
about that.
Yes. Yep, we can hear
it's a
you.
little preview, Rebecca, would be to show you here. It's possible to find, like if you're running safe and working with arts, or if you're having teams of teams or delivery units or whatever kind of constellations where you plan a lot of work together, like scale planning, you could zoom in on that here and find out which arts or units that are working with this epic. So what I'm showing here is a contextual zoom. That gives us the opportunity to zoom out and get the proper entire holistic overview. But we could also zoom in on the work here to find more information, such as the features being developed, which teams that are actually working on the features, and which art in this case that is working with Epic. So here we can see art, community, and social. So we could easily address them and talk about that Epic, and just, yeah, check the status on that.
All righty. So, Rebecca, what else is keeping you up at night? Do you have any other
Nice. If you can hear me clearly
items?
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask one question that I have, but also it looks like about six other people have too. Can you show one more time? How is this a plugin? Where do I click to get it?
So yeah, it's a plugin, and it's available on Visual Studio Marketplace, and it's called Nooga Portfolio. So like this text with portfolio after it, and it's available for trials. And you ask your Azure DevOps administrator to install a trial, and then it should be up and running. We're also going to provide a QR code at the end, so scan that if you would like to talk to us further about this. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to. I like the connection. I like the clarity. I love seeing the shadow work. I think it's amazing too that I can see what multiple arts are working on, because I feel like I see my executive strategy right now. And then sometimes I walk into these PI planning things and I see like distinct work across teams, which is nice, but that connection is really good. So I do have one more question. I have a lot of teams, a lot of teams. So this view is great because it kind of reduces that complexity, but we still have a lot of dependencies across. And some of those dependencies I want to have because they are strategic, but some of those dependencies we are just kind of a headache for everybody. So I could use some help. Do you have anything for that? Because it seems like you have a lot of answers today.
Yeah. So yeah, dependency management is truly a common issue. And it's a significant operational pain point. Many organizations, they try to manage those dependencies and they do that in ADO. But, once like you start doing your planning event, with PI planning or quarterly planning, you don't want it to become stagnant where you're not having discussions about those dependencies and what type of dependencies are have been identified early, but then as you start executing, what dependencies are coming up and you're identifying them. And what we've seen a lot of times in organizations that we've consulted with is they actually put a full-time person or a part-time person just to manage dependencies because there are so many within the complexity of the way they do their planning and they do their execution. So if you can adopt a tool that will help you with that, and we're going to show it to you, I think there's a benefit for that. How does that sound?
I think that sounds awesome. And while you pull up and show, I'm excited to see it. And all these voices in my head right now just have all these other questions. So I might pull on some of those too.
Excellent. So one thing before Michael shows, so Michael, I just want to make also one other point is that by leveraging this visual tool that you're about to see, you're going to get visuals of dependencies, but also risks. And doing both of those risks and dependencies helps you manage your complexity that is your execution model. So we can help you visualize by mapping out your high business work, looking at how it's connected to risk and dependencies, and then use a tool like we have to kind of show that. So Michael's going to take you through that. But the one thing I just want to call out is not only can we do risks at the art level or the program level, this tool can do risks at the portfolio level and even risks at your enterprise level as it applies to your strategic goals. So Michael, take it away.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah, so we're switching product now. It's still the same product suite, but here we are looking at scale. So I want to be clear on that since we got the question earlier. In the left menu, you see scale, and beneath it, you have portfolio, and above everything, you have our risk product. But we're only covering scale and portfolio today. Scale is the representation of the execution level. So you can find execution strategy everywhere, but this is how we see it at Nooga. So what you're seeing now are a list of all the arts, or team of teams, or delivery units for Happy Trails, and they are quite a few. It's a large international company. So we could expand on these and see which teams that actually are included here. And the whole point here is that you group by value stream and you have a common planning, right? So when I expand on the art, I can look at all the planning intervals, the cadence for planning, and we could choose to open any of these here. So if you remember, we were looking at the portfolio level here, and we had these colorized columns, and here it says 2026 Q2, and we had a day marker here, and we can see that we are some ongoing work, such as this epic. We can zoom in and you can see that there is currently work with a feature there. So this is the representation of that view, but in a more fine, detailed level. So if I choose the board here, I just open that planning interval, and here we see 2026 Q2. And if I collapse all the swim lanes, this is a representation of this art and all the teams, so you can see their planning. If I expand one swim lane, we can see the details for that team and the planning that they carried out. So here you can see when the organization can expect the outcomes of the features in their sprints. So this is a clear visualization of that. And here we can also see if there are any risks connected to that feature. But you were speaking about dependencies, John. So how do we work with dependencies here in Scale then?
And maybe, Michael, show, if you would, an example of a team-to-team dependency that might have come out during planning, because this is fantastic. I've seen people use tarps, they've used Excel sheets, and then they have to spend all that time to get that information actually into the tools. This actually is showing us really the information across multiple arts, across multiple planning events that may be happening all at the same time. So this is fantastic. Why don't you go ahead and show those team across team kind of dependencies that sometimes get seen in the planning event.
Yep, great addition there, Jan. So what we're looking here is the planning board for an art, so to say. So here are the dependencies within that art between the teams, and then we have dependencies between arts as well at a higher level.
Michael, if we didn't have art to art, but
Yep.
we had team to art, can this tool also handle maybe a program level dependency from one team to a different program that's in the portfolio? Can you also kind of create that type of link if needed?
So what we're trying to do here is use Azure DevOps native functionality to create dependencies, right? So you can basically create dependencies between which work items or all work items that exist.
Nice.
So that's a way to actually connect work items to each other and then visualize them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Before you go off this view, I just have one more question from
You
people.
go.
When I see a work item, how granular can I get? I don't really want to get granular as the executive, but some of my leaders do. So how deep can I actually see things?
So right now, that's one of the strengths by being in one tool, such as Azure DevOps. You can get all the way up to your strategic objectives at enterprise level, the top level, and you can go all the way down to tasks. That is user stories that has been broken down into tasks, so you can see everything. So if you would like, yeah, pretty much everything, if or given that you put the data into the system. It's not magical, so to say. So when we use the tool and enter data, then we can see pretty much everything.
So I am not an expert in SAFe, which is really hard to say. I'm not an expert in SAFe. What is that red line doing there? Why is that red?
So these are our dependencies, and at this fine detailed level, it's all about creating a plan with confidence, right? So when we walk out of this planning session, we want to have green arrows because that means that there are dependencies and they are in the right sequential order. So that creates more credibility for our plan, right? If we walk out and we have a lot of red arrows, that means that we did not resolve our dependencies. So this is a way to like help people and visualize that complexity and actually sort them out.
Yeah, think of Rebecca, it's kind of like the cart before the horse. You're trying to say, I'll be done on this time box in this sprint or this iteration, but your dependency isn't addressed till two more later in time. So the tool can pick that up and kind of let you know, hey, you've got to resolve this because your sequence is a little bit off there. And that's important. Now, one other thing, Michael, for the person in Rebecca's staff that has to manage all these dependencies, do you have another view that might list out like what are the dependencies that maybe came out of the planning event?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So before moving on to that question, I just would like to show you how we can make this simpler as well. Like if you need to address your dependencies, you can filter away cards without dependencies, so it's easier to identify all dependencies and make sure that they are green. So in this case, they need to have a conversation and maybe replan the work in order to change that. So your dependencies are showing and are sequentiated in the right order.
Yeah, Michael, I will say for that option that is in this tool, for any program coach, for any RTE, trying to simplify your planning board just to show dependencies in a view, I think will save you a lot of time. So that's a really fantastic feature.
Awesome. And then furthermore, like if we have dependencies that are outside of our art, or in some cases, large organizations actually have to plan their dependencies way in advance, like pre-PI planning, pre-PI planning, or something similar. There is a way to do that here as well and keep track of those dependencies. So here you would actually create dependency requests. So if the team is a bit aware of what they're doing in ahead of time, I'm not talking about big planning upfront here, but if there are known dependencies, they can create them here. But also there's digitalization of that handshake that you probably heard a lot of, like, did you handshake the dependency? So this dependency request means that one team asks another team or an art, like, hey, we're gonna build this. Could you help us? Please get this API in order by sprint 64 or whatever. And then that requested team can choose to decline or accept that. And that's how you communicate in this tool digitally and kind of manage your dependencies. Oh, thank you.
What happens when you accept or decline something?
Yeah, so let me go back to that. So then that dependency request gets converted to an actual story that the team that was requested will work with. So if John would ask me, hey, Mike, can you build me an API? And I say yes, then that request will be converted to a story on my team's board, which I need to plan in order to help John to that sprint when he wants that functionality being delivered.
Yep. And Michael, I'll just call out for anyone that does a sync, a scrum of scrums, or a sync between the RTE and the scrum masters. You can see on this screen, he actually has the late dependencies, meaning you promised you'd have this dependency addressed by a certain time. This tool will actually track that and make that available to you so you know which of your dependencies you're planning to address, but which ones are late where you've made a commitment and that commitment has not happened. So something for discussion during your Scrum of Scrums.
Yeah, great.
And Rebecca, this is another example where in your organization, you might have a person manually creating this report for you of where do these dependencies stand? What's the latest status? Are we actively, resolving those dependencies or addressing them? Are any new ones been identified? The nice thing about this tool is you can get that information real time. As long as it's an ADO, we can present that information.
John, I would be happy if I even had that baby step that you said. I don't even have that. I just have a bunch of leaders saying we have dependencies everywhere and everything is awful.
Yeah.
So just at least give me reality so I can see like, okay, what does awful actually mean?
You
So
got it. You got it.
that's
And then,
cool.
Michael, if you could, because she wants to see it all, I can tell
Yep.
Rebecca's getting excited. Show her the risks. I really
Yeah.
want to drive home what kind of risk information does this tool show? And if you could show it maybe at that program level, at that
Yeah.
portfolio level, and then the strategy level.
I'm going to run through it real quick so I have time for questions, but I would love to circle back to one of the things you mentioned in the beginning as well, success metrics, because we showed you how everything is connected together, but I would like to try to show you as well, like, are we doing the right things and are we pushing the needle? So help me remind that. I'll keep that
You
in
got
mind.
it.
I'll
You
circle
got
back
it.
to that one. So
Yes.
here we have two types of risks depending on which products you use. If you're using Scale standalone without our risk product, then you get risks in our own board. And here, I think many of you are familiar with this, but we have risks and we roam them during our planning. And on the board, you can see the risks connected to your features. So you can address those and make sure that you leave the planning with some people acting on the risks, especially if they are connected to high value outcomes, right? So you focus on the risks that matter. So that's an important thing. Let's jump into this view then, the portfolio level, because risks exist everywhere. And if you remember, we were talking about happy trails and this portfolio quarter experience that is working with a key result that says we need to reduce the time from satisfaction event to rating from 1 week to 48 hours. We need to get our users to actually rate our app. in that is due to that they want to reach 4.7. So if we look at the stuff that is connected here, we see that there is an epic called Never Get Lost on the Trail with augmented reality markers and voice turn by turn. So if you're out hiking on the trail and there's a lot of fog, you can get help from the app, right? That would be a nice feature. So they think like, oh, you saved my life. I'm gonna rate this app and make sure that they feel my appreciation. To mention the risks here as well. If I open this epic, we can click on the risk matrix here. And the risk matrix shows all the risks connected to this epic. And as we can see here, there are a risk that a hiker injury might trigger a lawsuit, and that has a score of 15. Or that augmented reality fails on half of user devices because, yeah, all technology might not be accurate, right? And those are high risks. And they are needed to discuss, right? But what we can do here, we can look at all the risks from this epic and all of its childs. So we can fetch all the risks, even from the scale, the execution level. So we can see the risk connected to the features and user stories. We can get a complete picture, which would be important. So if we look here, there's a predictability score in the right corner, and that's a score that indicates if we are able to deliver value as planned. And that looks at Azure DevOps and all the data there as well. Schedule adherence, scope adherence, like are we changing the contents, risks? Do we have any risks that are connected to this epic that are critical and unmitigated? So that gives us some kind of progress indication or score here.
So Rebecca, thinking about that leadership meeting with that review that you would have, wouldn't this be helpful if the tool could let you know from a predictability standpoint whether you're going to be delivering when they're telling you they're going to be able to deliver, and then that could lead to follow-up conversations?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this whole approach seems like it could really help with the level of complexity that all of my people say that they're trying to shuffle through, and then also gives me the view that I need. So I do really like this because I think it's going to provide accountability across the board for if it's available for everybody to dig in, then we'll get more honest reports and I'll be able to get insights that make sense.
And Michael, you asked me, you had me promise you I would bring up your value, your delivering the right things.
Yeah.
So that you have one last thing to show?
Yeah. So if we're looking at this, what can we draw from this picture? What do we see here? So we see how work connects. We can see the status. We can see risks. We can see investments. We can see how many things are ongoing for this OKR, for this portfolio. And I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 epics. And I could even see the teams here. I could change this view and look at that OKR and look at the key results here. So you can see that when it comes to success metrics, we're not doing that good, but we're doing a lot of work. We are at 34% for this key result. We should be at 89 given the period for this OKR. And then we can start to expand on this. We can look at the epic and all the teams, and we can get a kind of understanding of all the work and all the teams that are working with this OKR. So we want to look at both the execution status, but also the OKR pace status. And this is what we see here. So this is just another view where we can look at our OKR. And this one was meant to get Happy Trails from 4.2 to 4.7, inspire hikers to share their love for Happy Trail with the world. But they are not pushing the needle. So when you look at outcomes and measure those, you're not seeing those results here, but you can see the investments in this view. So that was how I wanted to connect the views.
Excellent. And then Michael, if you could, because I'm seeing a few questions that maybe Rebecca has about other tools. So if I'm not using ADO, is there any option for me with using your tool with other tools?
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of other tools that are mature and are doing the same things, but one challenge in larger organization, enterprise organizations, is the separation of tools and a lot of tools. So what I personally like with Azure DevOps is the integration features, right? it's easy to integrate with Azure DevOps. We are actually not having our own systems. We are using the data in Azure DevOps. We are just visualizing and modifying that data. It's easy to integrate and pull data into Azure DevOps, and then you can have the complete holistic overview.
Excellent. So what do you think, Rebecca, from our demonstration today?
I think it's cool. I want to give all of the people who joined us the ability to know how to reach out to you to learn more, because I think we have so many questions. I still have so many questions, and I want people to be able to reach out, ask you guys things, and recognize that not everybody can stay for the entirety of the hour we have. So this is really cool. Thank you. Can you stop sharing for a second?
Yep.
And then I might ask you to share again. Thank you.
So,
Okay.
Rebecca, we'll schedule a follow-up call next week. So we'll talk soon.
Okay. So if you want to learn more, because I know I want to learn more, and there's all sorts of questions that we're going to try to rapid fire as many as we can at the end. If you look on screen, here is a code to get in touch with Michael, talk more about Nooga if you would like. It looks like a super amazing tool. I wish I had had it when I ran a transformation. Would have been really helpful. In addition, we've got a code for the bubbly, awesome John. So go ahead. You can reach out about Cprime. You can find John on LinkedIn. You can reach out to him, ask questions, get more things answered. He knows all about how Nooga works, how to work within that inside of Portfolio. Both of them are really good at understanding Portfolio successes. And last but shortest, I'm pretty sure I'm the shortest on this call. You can come and chat with me, with Cprime, with a lot of our tool partners at the SAFe Summit in San Diego. It's going to be a really fun time. So if you'd like to go to SAFe Summit San Diego and start to register, there's a QR code for that too.